All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking real music in real time for a few real people out there just like you and just like me. Going to be talking about the real reason Led Zeppelin never got back together again. It's pretty simple. Some people make it more complicated. It really isn't. And it's not because the late John Bonham passed away back in 1980 and nobody wanted to replace him. That's certainly not the issue. In any event, here is a great album you should check out if you like blues and rock, since we're talking about Zeppelin and they have some blues, rock, and other things in their DNA. This guy here playing bar rooms all across the country, dive bars, if you want to call those venues that particular designation. But Chris O'Leary, he's got material under just his own name and also under the Chris O'Leary Band. This is a live album, and it's super well done. Live at Blues Now. He's got new material, I believe, coming out in the spring or possibly late winter, so you should look for that. Now, on to the Led Zeppelin controversy, which it really isn't. But Robert Plant is out there talking to the media. He had an interview with the Irish Examiner, and he's talking about the recent vinyl reissue of Led Zeppelin 4, an album I know pretty much every one of my stoner friends had back when I discovered Led Zeppelin. Basically, you go down to the basement, and there's a cloud of smoke down there, and there's a turntable, and this album is playing with that iconic green and red Atlantic Records logo on the inside there. And of course, I did not partake in the actual substance smoking, but unlike Bill Clinton, there is a possibility that I may have inhaled. All right, so just full disclosure here on the show. Many years later, I figured I would just come clean and just tell folks I may have inhaled. I didn't like smoking anything. I didn't smoke cigarettes. I didn't smoke doobies, right? Even though I listened to the doobies, I didn't smoke them. So just, I don't know, maybe too much information, right? So anyway, though, pretty much everybody had this album. They're putting it back out there. Why? Why not, right? I mean, vinyl is making a big comeback, apparently. And Robert Plant weighed in on rumors that Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones wanted to carry on with the band more than 4 decades ago if it meant continuing without Robert Plant. Holy crap, Batman. So they so much wanted to do this that they were willing to audition singers. I don't know why they didn't call the dude from the band Kingdom Come. I mean, and then Jason Bonham, he had a singer in his band that was pretty Plant-like. But apparently they wanted somebody maybe a little bit more high profile, as we'll find out. Plant says, though, you have to keep on developing. Probably for everybody and everything, it was the right thing. Apparently not, Robert, because these other guys wanted to keep the thing going. Plant said of Led Zeppelin's 1980 breakup, this was following the alcohol-induced death of drummer John Bonham. He said, it was right for me. Okay, interesting. Now, again, I'm just putting this in perspective. I'm not trying to get on Robert Plant's case here, but everything kind of broke down in 1980. Like later in 1980, it broke down. Plant was in the studio in 1981, recording his first solo album. And then in 1982, that album was released, Pictures at 11. People accused Plant of just basically carrying on the Led Zeppelin tradition, because if you go listen to that album, it sounds like Led Zeppelin. In fact, what's weird is that when In Through the Outdoor came out, and that was late 79 into 80, so that was all over the radio and was probably one of their most radio-friendly albums. Had the keyboards in it. I believe that was John Paul Jones. I'm thinking of All My Love, especially, which even hit the top 40, which Led Zeppelin, they weren't known for having big top 40 hits. So they were everywhere. The timing of Bonham's death was horrible. They're going into a new decade. They've harnessed a new sound for the new decade. And then, unfortunately, John Bonham drinks himself to death. But Plant, who says, these guys wanted to continue, and I didn't. Yet I made at least 2 albums that sound, if you look at Pictures at 11, like I say, Burning Down One Side. If you haven't heard that in a while, he's trying to go back to like Presence or Physical Graffiti. I mean, he's certainly not pushing, the ball forward. The Principle of Moments does kind of the same thing, although he really gets into that more mystical side with Big Log and In the Mood. By the time we get to Shaken and Stirred, I think Plant has changed things up quite a bit. And then Now and Zen, which I think is an amazing album, which doesn't necessarily sound like Led Zeppelin, although one of the songs ends up sampling all of these Led Zeppelin songs. That's Tall, Cool One, which hit the top 40. Unusual again for Robert Plant or Led Zeppelin. The bottom line is, even though Plant said, hey, this is the end of Led Zeppelin, he went on and he really piggybacked off of what Zeppelin had done up until that point. In fact, I think he time traveled back into the mid-70s for those first 2 albums, whereas Zeppelin as a whole, I think, were preparing for the new decade with In Through the Outdoor, which I think could be one of their best albums. I mean, people talk about 4 and 2 and the debut. In Through the Outdoor was the perfect comeback album after Presence, which is an underrated album, but wasn't all that well received, going back to like the mid-70s. So Zeppelin does get back together again in 07 at the O2. And of course, Jason Bonham is there. And to me, this is the natural thing. Say anytime after 1990, you call Jason Bonham and you say, hey, 90s music is horrible. Let's try to save the 90s and do the Zeppelin reunion, much like the Eagles tried to save the 90s when they did their reunion. And there was, sort of a impetus for that reunion. Whereas I think there's just this one guy who didn't want to do all of this. So after the 07 reunion, they went out looking for singers. We're talking about Page and Jones looking for a way to keep this going, including Steven Tyler from Aerosmith and Miles Kennedy from Alter Bridge. Now, look, Steven Tyler in Aerosmith and then Steven Tyler in Led Zeppelin. Yeah, can I see that? Yeah, I can see it, but this is, again, it's like a merger of corporations. This is the new branding that a lot of these promoters do now. And they say, we've got this guy from this band showing up with this other guy. And you're like, whoa, star power, right? Could Steven Tyler replace Robert Plant? Yes. Would he want to dilute the Aerosmith brand that much to be in Led Zeppelin? I don't know. See, at the time, I think he was, doing the American Idol thing, and even his bandmates were getting irritated with him because Aerosmith wasted a ton of musical capital by just staying away for so long. And now, they're trying to wrap up their career, and Steven Tyler breaks his voice, literally breaks his larynx. So a lot of wasted time there. I bet if you gave Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones some sodium pentothal, they would tell you that, yeah, it wouldn't be bad maybe to do a little tour with the old band. Wouldn't even now. But the problem is so much time has gone by since 07, and apparently John Paul Jones went off with Dave Grohl, of all people, and went into something called Them Crooked Vultures, Page later said, I guess that was a pretty definitive statement. I'm thinking the reason is they saw the handwriting on the wall and they understood that Plant didn't want to do this. And it's really hard to go on without Plant. He's basically holding them hostage. Jimmy Page never really let go of the Led Zeppelin sound. If you go listen to his collaboration with David Coverdale, again, Coverdale Page, amazing album from start to finish. You go back and listen to Jimmy Page on his album Outrider, not as good of an album compared to his collaboration with David Coverdale, but certainly still trying to be Led Zeppelin. He had John Miles. He had Robert Plant singing on that album with him, which is interesting. I'm surprised that Plant agreed to do that, because then you'd get all this speculation. And of course, you have the Honey Drippers, right? Which sounded nothing like Led Zeppelin, but was still a great collaboration. And by the way, there was a rumor that there was going to be a Honey Drippers 2 album at some point, and that's never materialized. But even now, just going back and finding a great 50s song to cover or 60s song to cover and having those two guys on it, I think would be cool. It wouldn't get on the radio, but it would be cool. So this is how Robert Plant kind of summarizes things. Led Zeppelin was an amazing, prolific, fun factory for a period of time. But it was 3 amazing musicians and a singer living in the times. Those times. That's not going to stop me doing what I'm doing now. Now think if the Stones had thought of things this way. Well, the Stones in the 70s were kind of for that time. I know Zeppelin and the Stones are different in many ways, but the Stones, right? They don't care what's in fashion. They don't care what's cool right now. They continue to make great music even now, and people want to hear it. People are excited about a new Rolling Stones album, even if, the radio industry has forgotten about them. It doesn't matter. The people speak louder than the industry does. Plant goes on to say, so that's a headline or not a headline. Okay, because he's saying it's not going to stop me doing what I'm doing now. Going back in time and reminiscing. Nobody's trying to stop you, Robert. You might actually be able to do both, I'm thinking. He says, it doesn't matter to me. If I didn't, I'd be a whore, and I'm never going to do that. Why did he use that word? Well, he thinks that, and there is some truth to this, that, hey, if I can't do this really well, and we kind of found out on Stairway to Heaven that he can't do what he used to do. And I'm not expecting him to. For about 50% of the song, he was sort of on target. And then toward the end, where in the original song, things get crazy, he's not able to do that. And they should have figured out a way that they were going to rework it. So, and that leads me to my conclusion, though, about how this could have worked. So his writing style, obviously, he mentions in this article that he was basically writing these mystical, magical, new ageist kind of stoner teenager type songs. He progressed. Everybody moved on. Zeppelin, at the dawn, they were ready to be different. They were different. People liked the Plant solo stuff because it was identifiable, especially on those first 2 albums. It sounded like Led Zeppelin. With Jason Bonham later coming of age, it's natural. He's the heir apparent to his dad. Just bring him in. He's a great drummer, by the way. Sammy Hagar really likes him. He's going out on the Van Halen tribute tour, and that's good. He deserves it. Look, nobody was a drummer like his dad, though. His dad probably hit the skins harder than anybody. Keith Moon maybe hit him as hard. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a drummer expert, but all I know is John Bonham hit the drums very hard. And I'm thinking people were still interested in that mediocre take on Stairway to Heaven. The fans never went away. And some of them are still waiting, believe it or not. So people hold out hope. They say things like, well, maybe they'll get back together. Maybe they'll do some shows. I mean, the Stones, they're planning a tour next year. Crazy, right? Why would the Rolling Stones do that? Because people want to see them. The fans, again, never went away. And I think the same holds true for Led Zeppelin. The Stones never completely, though, said we're done and then we're going to come back. Of course, there were some arguments and some brief breakups. I'm thinking of the late 80s after, what was it? Dirty Work, I think is the name of the album, in the mid 80s, the one where they're dressed up and they're wearing all these colorful clothes. And then they come out with Steel Wheels, which was a huge comeback album and a huge, super successful tour. And they had that song Mixed Emotions, which was kind of like a healing moment for the band. Look, I think the relationship between Keith and Mick is a stronger relationship than the relationship between Robert and Jimmy. I think that's part of the issue here. Robert has put himself above the rest of the guys, and I don't know. It rubs me the wrong way. Look, the drummer situation early on, Carmen Appice, Geezer Butler, the power drummers that are out there who I'm sure would have been very happy to fill in until, Jason got old enough. I know he was behind the kit at 5 years old or whatever. But the point is, fans wanted this. Page wanted it. John Paul Jones, at least initially, wanted it. And obviously, Jason Bonham was the biggest cheerleader, wanting this to somehow materialize, but it just never did. The 07, that was it. And then after all of that speculation, it just kind of fizzled out because Robert Plant knew that he could be successful on his own, especially with people like Alison Krauss. So anyway, I think Robert Plant, the punchline here is he's the reason, not John Bonham's death, which was tragic. And maybe that ends a few bands out there at that point. They say, well, we can't go on without him. But after a number of years, his son comes of age and is eager to do it. We're not talking about Julian Lennon, replacing his father. We're talking about Jason Bonham wanting to do this, loves this music, grew up listening to it, wants to keep the torch lit, has done everything in his power to do that, but has been kind of turned away by Robert Plant most of the time. So you can blame Robert Plant for this. There's no other way to look at it. If you think it's sacrilegious for them to continue, they didn't. Page didn't, and John Paul Jones didn't, and Jason Bonham didn't, and I don't think it is either. So that's my video on the topic, not the definitive video on this, as there are many rock historians and very knowledgeable people out there who can sort of piece this all together. And for Led Zeppelin fans, though, with the stoner vinyl coming out again, I guess you can relive the stoner vinyl, go down in the basement, see if that cloud of smoke can develop again, just like the old days, and drop the needle down, and you'll have to flip it over, though. That's the downside to it. And after the first side, you may not be capable of flipping the record over if you're in the cloud of smoke. All right, before I go, the Chris O'Leary Band live at Blues Now. Check out anything by Chris O'Leary. Also, folks, if you can support the channel via Patreon or YouTube memberships, I'm earning about half the pay I used to earn last year. I'm trying to find new creative ways within the confines of the YouTube ecosystem, like advertising and tagging products and stuff. So if you see that on videos, don't be alarmed. It's me trying to maybe earn a living. So don't be alarmed by that, because it's now available. So I'm going to take advantage of that. In the meantime, folks, again, it's a crazy holiday week for me and maybe for you. I'm hoping that you spend time with your family, as I'm planning on doing. And God bless everyone. And please pray for peace, especially in the Middle East. See you soon.